Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ms. McGuire video lecture. And today we're covering the cardiovascular system, blood vessels. Now, blood vessels, it's a delivery system of dynamic structures that begins and ends at the heart. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. So remember, arteries start with A and away starts with A. So arteries away from the heart. Oxygenated blood mostly, except for pulmonary circulation. In pulmonary circulation, pulmonary arteries carry deoxygenated blood away from the heart to the lungs and umbilical vessels of a fetus. Capillaries contact tissue cells and directly serve cellular needs. Exchange between blood and cells happens within capillaries. Veins carry blood towards the heart. In most veins, blood is deoxygenated, with exception of pulmonary circulation again. In the pulmonary circulation, oxygenated blood from the lungs moves toward the heart in veins, right? So pulmonary veins, we have oxygenated blood. But in systemic circulation, you will find deoxygenated blood in veins. Right, so on this diagram, you can see that we have the heart, an arterial system. We go away from the heart, and you see how those blood vessels get smaller and smaller until we get to capillaries. This is where we have a gas exchange and nutrient exchange. Then from capillaries unite, forming venules and bigger veins, and blood returns back to the heart. What you also can see here, lymphatic blood vessels. It's another circulatory system of your body. So what lymphatic vessels do, they pick up extra fluid that leaked out of capillaries and return this fluid back to the heart. Structure of blood vessels wall. Arteries and veins. We have three tunics. Tunica intima, the deepest tunic, tunica media, and tunica externa on the surface of blood vessels. Lumen, central blood containing space. Capillaries are made of endothelium with sparse basal lamina. So here's our tunics. Tunica intima, endothelium that lines the lumen of all vessels. Tunica media, smooth muscle and sheets of elastin, and not only elastic tissue, but also smooth muscle. Yeah, so it's smooth muscles and elastic tissue that is connective tissue. Tunica externa, it's called tunica adventitia, collagen fibers that protect and reinforce blood vessels. So of course, arteries and veins are different. Well, arteries are designed to carry blood under higher blood pressure. Blood pressure in veins lower than in arteries. And of course, it's all reflected in the structure of their tunics. But the name of the tunics are the same. So tunica externa on the surface, tunica media, right, that we have our smooth muscles, elastic tissue, and then tunica intima, that is called endothelium, so it's epithelial tissue, and lumen is a space where blood is located. Now, if you look at the capillaries, capillaries do not have those tunics. They're made of endothelium and basement membrane. Also, inside veins, you will find valves that prevent backflow of blood. Now, if we look back, let's go back for a second to this slide. And you see the biggest arteries are close to the heart, and they called elastic arteries or conducting vessels. Then arteries became small in diameter. We call them muscular arteries. So we decrease the elastic fibers, but we increase muscle tissue. Muscular arteries are called distributing arteries. So the further away you are from the heart, the smaller blood vessel became, right? Now we're gonna look at this elastic or conducting arteries. They have large, thick-walled, large, thick-walled arteries with elastin in all three tunings. Elastic arteries include aorta and its major branches. A large lumen offers low resistance. They act as pressure reservoirs, expand and recoil as blood is ejected from the heart. So when we are in a systole, that means ventricles contract, they push blood through aorta, and aorta expand. So it has this ability to expand because it's an elastic artery, right? So here, when we have our diastole and heart relaxes, blood pressure drops and we need to recoil the blood vessels, right? If arteries are stiff, then they cannot expand, and it's increased blood pressure within the arteries. So it's actually can damage the walls. If walls cannot expand and recoil, then high blood pressure can damage the walls, and it can cause aneurysm, for example, and another structural damage. Now, muscular distributing arteries and arterioles, they distal to elastic arteries, deliver blood to body organs, have thick tunica media with more smooth muscle, and active in vasoconstriction. Arterioles, smallest arteries, lead to capillary beds, control flow into capillary beds via vasodilation and vasoconstriction. So here's our arteries became smaller, called arterioles, and then arterioles became capillaries. Capillaries, macroscopic blood vessels, walls of thin tunica intima, 1 cell thick. Size allows only a single red blood cells to pass at a time. Capillaries are found in all tissues except cartilage, epithelia, cornea, and lens of eye. Function in exchange of gases, nutrients, waste, and hormones. So you can see picture of capillaries. So here's our red blood cells, and oxygen moves from the blood to the tissue. So here you would have cells of tissue. Nutrients move to the tissue or to body cells, and then we pick up carbon dioxide, waste products, and blood carries to veins. Now from arteries to arterioles to capillaries, that's where we have exchange, and back to veins. And you have like huge amount of capillaries. So for example, this just show you a network of capillaries that's surrounding your cells, your tissue. So you pretty much have capillaries everywhere in your body, with some exceptions that we just described. We have 3 structural types of capillaries: continuous, fenestrated, and sinusoidal capillaries, or sinusoids. Continuous capillaries abundant in the skin and muscles. They have tight junctions that connect epithelial cells, intercellular clefts, or pores or openings between cells allow the passage of fluids and small solutes. So you can see on the diagram here, we have endothelial cells making capillaries. Now here's one cell right here with the nucleus. Inside, you can see red blood cell and of course plasma and white blood cells. And there is a junction between cells and intercellular cleft. So small openings that allow passage of small solutes. So because this is type of epithelial cell, you know, epithelial cells always resting on a basement membrane. So here we have basement membrane. So most common capillaries, continuous capillaries, they least permeable and most common and found in your skin and your muscles. They abundant in your skin and muscles. Fenestrated capillaries. Some endothelial cells contain pores, fenestration, more permeable than continuous capillaries, function in absorption or filtrate formation, found in small intestine, endocrine glands, and kidneys. So fenestrated capillaries show over here. Here's our endothelial cell, and we have intercellular cleft, and plus those fenestration or pores. So large fenestration or pores increase permeability and occurs in a special location where you need a larger substances to move in and out, like in a small intestine where you need nutrients move from a blood or from your small intestine to your blood. So nutrients need to pass through those fenestration to your capillaries and be delivered to your organs and tissues. Kidney, where you filter stuff out from the blood, so you need bigger opening. And sinusoidal capillaries, fewer tight junction, usually fenestrated, allow large molecules and blood cells, even blood cells, to pass between the blood and surrounding tissue. Now think about it. If your blood cells leave a capillary, that's bleeding. So where do you need blood cells to be able to leave capillaries? Well, in the places where you destroy non-functioning, old, damaged blood cells. And that's gonna be your liver, your spleen, your bone marrow. In the bone marrow, you also form new red blood cells and white blood cells. So you need those cells to be able to move inside the capillaries. So that's where you found the sinusoids that are most permeable and allow larger molecules and even blood cells to leave the blood vessels. Capillary beds are interwoven network of capillaries that form the microcirculation between arterioles and venues. So if you look at this diagram here, we have some arterial, small blood vessel, that's a terminal arterial, and here we have a capillary bed. So this capillary bed surrounds tissues, and this is where you have exchange. And then you have the venules. Consist of two types of vessels, vascular shunt or medarterial, and that directly connects arterial and venule. So this is our medarterial, and thoracic channel. It continues with this thoracic channel. So it's direct connection between arterial and venule and true capillaries. So everything else are called true capillaries. 10 to 100 exchange vessels per capillary bed, branch of the medarterial or terminal arterial. Now, how blood flows through capillary beds? Now we have pre-capillary sphincters. So this smooth muscle that form those sphincters. Now, when sphincters are relaxed, that blood flow inside the capillaries. But when you contract the sphincters, you see, you don't have blood flow through the capillaries, and you have this direct path through mid-arterioles. So precapillary sphincters regulate blood flow into true capillaries. The contraction of these precapillary sphincters is regulated by local chemicals and vasomotor nerves. Now, actually, these mid-arterial and thoracic channels are found only in mesenteric circulation. So circulation that deliver blood to your digestive organs. And why do you need it? So, for example, if you just ate a big meal, now you need to move nutrients from your GI tract to your blood, then you need lots of blood flow to your GI tract. If you are exercising, for example, you need blood flow to your muscles, not to your GI tract, then you can contract those sphincters and allow less blood to flow through your digestive organs and more blood flow to your muscles. So this is how you regulate the blood flowing to your GI tract, blood flowing to your muscles, because you only have 5 liters of blood. If you need more blood in one place, you need to shut down blood supply to, or decrease at least. You cannot completely shut down blood supply, but you need to decrease blood flow to another organs. Oops, sorry. Then we go to venules. They form when capillary beds unite. Very porous, allow fluids and white blood cells into tissues. Larger venules have 1 or 2 layers of smooth muscle cells. And then we go to veins. They're bigger than venules. They formed when venules converge, have thinner walls, larger lumen compared with corresponding arteries. Blood pressure is lower than in arteries. Veins adaptation that ensure return of blood to the heart. First, they have large diameter lumens that offer little resistance, and they have valves that prevent backflow of blood. Valves are most abundant in veins of the limbs. Venous sinuses are flattened veins with extremely thin walls. For example, coronary sinus of the heart and dural sinuses of the brain. So here you can see a healthy vein with a valve. And here's a varicose vein when valves are not functioning properly and you have blood, instead of blood flowing kind of in one direction, right, towards the heart, now blood start flowing backwards, and it damages the structure of veins, and that's what we call varicose vein. And on the picture below, you can see those flattened veins that form sinuses. So we have lots of sinuses that surrounds your brain. Vascular anastomosis. Those are interconnections of blood vessels. Arterial anastomosis provide alternate pathway, collateral channels to a given body region. Anastomosis are common at joints in abdominal organs, brain, and heart. Venous anastomosis are also common. So you can see we can have anastomosis between veins, like these blood vessels that connect veins together. And here, anastomosis even between artery and a vein. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about major blood vessels of your body. So we're gonna start with the biggest artery, that is aorta. So here's the heart, And remember, heart is divided into right and left pump. And the left pump, we have a left atrium. So from left atrium, you have aorta. So blood from left atrium flow into aorta. Aorta has several parts. So it's shown over here, number 1, called ascending aorta. So aorta that goes up here, ascending aorta. Then it makes this loop called aortic arch, and then it goes down. So that's descending aorta. But this number 3, this part of descending aorta is inside thoracic cavity. So it's called thoracic aorta. And then when it's moves below the diaphragm, we call it abdominal aorta. So the first 2 branches from aorta are right and left coronary arteries that supply blood to the heart muscle. So here's your ascending, aortic arch, descending, thoracic, and then down to abdominal aorta. Now from aortic arch, we have 3 branches: brachiocephalic on the right side, left common carotid, and left subclavian artery. And brachiocephalic artery is a short blood vessel that very quickly branches into 2 other blood vessels, right subclavian and right common carotid. So if you look at this on the top of this line that I'm drawing, you have 4 blood vessels: right subclavian, left subclavian, right common carotid, left common carotid. The difference is these 2 left branches, they branch from arch, and the right branch from brachiocephalic artery. Now, subclavian artery, you can guess, looking at the name, it will go under the clavicle and then to your arm and forearm. Common carotid gonna take blood to your head, neck, and brain. Right, so over here, let's see what blood vessels we have. So here's our brachiocephalic artery, or sometimes you call it trunk, that splits into right common carotid and right subclavian. Okay, so common carotid moves up, and at the area where you have your laryngeal prominence or your Adam's apple, it splits into internal carotid, takes blood to the brain, and external carotid. Now, branches from external carotid includes facial artery, temporal artery, and occipital artery. There is another important artery that brings blood to your brain, and it's vertebral artery. So now we're reaching the brain. So here's our vertebral arteries that unite together and form basilar artery. So that's a pond of a brain. And here's our internal carotid artery that will branch into anterior cerebral arteries, middle cerebral arteries, and posterior cerebral arteries. So you can see lots of anastomosis or connections between these blood vessels called a circle of Willis. So those are anastomosis that we talk about that provide alternative routes to your brain. All right, so here we're gonna move down to the arm. All right, so here's our brachiocephalic, then subclavian, common carotid, then subclavian artery reaches axillary region and changes name, became axillary artery, brachial artery. When it's approaching your antecubital region, it splits. On the radial side, remember that's your thumb, so bone over here is radial, so it's a radial artery. On the ulnar side, ulnar artery, and they make those loop. So they connect together through deep palmar arch and superficial palmar arch, and we have digital arteries that bring blood to the fingers. And you also can see thoracic artery here, and then thoracic became abdominal, and this blood vessel here is called internal thoracic artery. So we have thoracic, did I say artery? Thoracic aorta, abdominal aorta, and internal thoracic artery, as this branch shown right there. So it's inside your rib cage. Now we below the diaphragm. So if we below the diaphragm, that blood vessel, huge one, that's abdominal aorta. Now there is a short blood vessels that kind of coming towards you. It's called celiac trunk. It's important because this celiac trunk brings blood to the most of digestive organs of your body. Well, of course, we have others, small and large intestines. This one, yeah, I'll take it back, not to the most, to the important digestive organs of your body, because it doesn't bring blood to your small and large intestines. That's going to be mesenteric arteries. So celiac trunk splits into 3 branches: right gastric, to blood to the stomach; splenic, to spleen, so here's your spleen; and common hepatic, to the liver. Again, left gastric, did I say right gastric? I'm sorry. Left gastric, splenic, and common hepatic. Now from this common hepatic, we have right gastric. So we have left gastric and right gastric, and then common hepatic became hepatic proper that takes blood to the liver, right? So celiac trunk, left gastric, splenic, common hepatic. All right, so so here we can see, by the way, our celiac trunk. So it's right here. That's our celiac trunk with left gastric, splenic, common hepatic. Just above it, we have inferior phrenic artery. It takes blood to the diaphragm. So that's a diaphragm here, by the way. Now, another blood vessel that comes towards you is called superior mesenteric artery, that brings blood to the small intestine and part of a large intestine. And next one that goes towards you is inferior mesenteric artery, blood to the large intestine. Right. Over here, we also see renal arteries. This is suprarenal, that takes blood to adrenal gland. And there is these blood vessels here. They are not labeled, but those are, if it's female, then it's ovarian artery. If it's male, it's testicular artery. But in general, you can call them gonadal arteries that take blood to gonads, either testes or ovaries. And abdominal aorta then splits because you need to carry blood to both legs. It splits into common iliac arteries, right and left. Now over here from our common iliac, so here we have our common iliac. It splits into external iliac and internal iliac. Now external iliac gonna move down femoral region, and it's called femoral artery. When it's approaching your kneecap or popliteal region, just above it, it dies through this up to, it's called adductor hiatus. So there will be like a little opening over here between muscles, and artery moves to the back, because you don't want this artery to run in front of your kneecap. So it's on anterior side, anterior medial side of your thigh, but then there is no way you want this huge artery to run in front of your patella. So it dips down and goes to the back of your thigh. And here where it reappears on the back, and it changes name. Now we call it popliteal artery because that's a popliteal region. And it has, this popliteal artery has 3 branches. One goes back to the front, called anterior tibial artery. One goes all the way down, posterior tibial artery, and another branch go to the lateral side called fibula artery. So here we see this anterior tibial reappears on anterior side, and it's became what is called over here dorsalis pedis, and then arcuate artery. And arcuate artery has dorsal metatarsal arteries and digital arteries. And posterior tibial, right? So here again, our popliteal, one branch is anterior tibial, and another branch go all the way down, posterior tibial artery. It became medial plantar arch on the medial side, lateral plantar artery, not arch, sorry, medial plantar artery, lateral plantar artery, forming palmar arch and digital arteries. And the fibula artery goes on the lateral side of the leg. And now we need to return blood back to the heart. Now, when you look at veins, we have more veins than we have arteries, because some veins are deep and some are superficial. Deep veins, they run along corresponding arteries and they have the same name. And I used kind of blue color for names that are the same as name of arteries. So if you have anterior tibial vein and it's in blue, that means you have anterior tibial artery. And I use these green boxes to represent superficial arteries, and you don't have corresponding names for arteries. Superficial veins. I use this green color to show superficial veins, and they don't have corresponding arteries, right? So again, we're gonna pick up blood. So we're gonna start with dorsal metatarsal veins. Then we have dorsal venous arch, because this is dorsum of your foot. And flowing back through anterior tibial vein, right? Then we behind the kneecap. So here's our anterior tibial. And it's bring blood to popliteal vein. Now you also collect blood from the posterior part of your leg. So digital veins, plantar veins, and here our posterior tibial artery, fibula artery, and anterior tibial artery, and popliteal. Why am I calling it artery? I'm sorry. Let's start over. We're talking about veins, but now why I call it digital arteries, plantar arteries, because we have digital arteries. Yes, they deep and they have arteries that with the same names, right? So we have digital veins, plantar veins, posterior tibial vein, fibula vein, anterior tibial vein, but don't, be with me, and I apologize because look, we have the same artery. We have posterior tibial artery and posterior tibial vein, and they located next to each other. We have fibula artery and fibula vein. We have anterior tibial artery and anterior tibial vein, right? So that's what you see on this diagram. So we pick up that blood from dorsal metatarsal vein, anterior tibial, digital veins, plantar veins, posterior tibial, fibula veins, everything in the popliteal vein. Then popliteal vein became femoral, external iliac, and common iliac. And over here, we even have internal iliac vein. But you also collect blood from the superficial part of your lower extremities. So those are superficial veins. And superficial veins bring blood finally to your deep veins. So we have this dorsal venous arch, and we have this very huge vein. It's the longest vein in your body called great saphenous vein. And small saphenous vein right there. So you have small saphenous that brings blood to popliteal, and great saphenous that brings blood to the femoral vein. Right, okay. Sorry again with this confusion with veins and arteries. Now we're gonna collect blood, right, from our femoral vein into external iliac and internal iliac. So internal iliac, you collect blood from the pelvic region. They bring blood to common iliac vein. And then this big blood vessel here is called inferior vena cava. You also need to collect blood from kidneys, renal veins, right there, suprarenal veins, from liver, hepatic veins. So all this blood flow to inferior vena cava, then inferior vena cava pinches through the diaphragm and brings blood to the heart. But look, you also need to pick up blood from digestive organs, right? Where's the blood from stomach, from small intestine, from large intestine, from spleen, where all this blood, right? So let's look where this blood is first. Oh my goodness, where is that? Right there. So we will get back to this, to other slides. So here, that's our large intestine. That's the beginning of large intestine. How do I know? Because you see, this is appendix. This is the end of a large intestine because we have rectum and anus. So you're gonna pick up all the blood from large intestine. You're gonna pick up blood from small intestine. Where's the small intestine? So that's also, so it's gonna be a small intestine over here as well. You're gonna pick up blood from the stomach, from spleen, and you're gonna bring all this blood to your liver first, right? So blood from digestive organs will be picked up by superior mesenteric vein, inferior mesenteric vein, splenic vein, gastric veins, and this blood will flow to liver first for processing. And that blood vessels that bring blood to the liver from digestive organ is called hepatic portal vein. And then from liver, when you clean this blood, when you process all the nutrients from the liver, you will go through this hepatic vein. So imagine you have liver over here. So here you have a liver. And from a liver, you bring blood through hepatic vein to inferior vena cava, right? So it's called portal circulation. So let's look at this diagram over here. So aorta gonna bring oxygenated blood to all your digestive organs, right? To your stomach, spleen, pancreas, small and large intestine. Stomach, spleen, and pancreas through celiac trunk. And you're gonna bring, of course, blood, oxygenated blood to a liver as well. To the small intestine and part of the large intestine, you will have superior mesenteric, and the last part of large intestine, inferior mesenteric. So you're gonna bring all this oxygenated blood to digestive organs. Now, digestive organs have nutrients, right? The small intestine have nutrients inside. Those nutrients will move to blood through the veins, right? And all this blood, so, and again, we're gonna have superior mesenteric vein, inferior mesenteric vein, a splenic vein, a gastric vein. Those blood vessels unite into portal hepatic vein and take blood to the liver first for processing. So liver will store some nutrients. It will remove some maybe toxins from your from the blood, and that clean blood moves from liver through hepatic vein to inferior vena cava and then to your heart, right? So here we go to the stomach and intestine, so show these blood vessels. Nutrients are absorbed into capillary beds. Then from hepatic portal vein, we go to liver. Liver cells will process nutrients and toxins. So they will leave the blood vessels. Those liver cells, hepatocytes, will process them, and the blood returns through hepatic vein to inferior vena cava to the blood, right? That's how we return blood from digestive organs. Okay. Well, now let's see how we return blood from your head and neck. Right. So we have, again, if it's in the blue, we have veins and arteries with the same name. So we have facial vein, we have superficial temporal vein, occipital vein. We will have blood vessels from the brain that bring blood to the internal jugular vein. So this is a big internal jugular vein and external jugular vein. Also, blood from the brain will return back through vertebral vein to the our subclavian vein, and then subclavian vein and internal jugular come together. We form brachiocephalic vein, and brachiocephalic to the superior vena cava, and superior vena cava to the heart. Okay, so here we from the brain, we have superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus, transverse sinuses, cavernous sinus over here, sigmoid sinus, and all this blood is collected into internal jugular vein, and then internal jugular vein, again over here, internal jugular connects to brachiocephalic and superior vena cava. Returning back from the hand, we have digital veins, superficial venous palmar arch. And here, again, you have a lot of superficial veins. So we're going to start with deep veins first. Radial vein, ulnar vein, brachial, then became axillary, subclavian, and brachiocephalic, and superior vena cava. But here's our superficial vein, the ones that close to the body, called basilic vein. So here's the basilic, and on the lateral side, you have cephalic vein. So both basilic and cephalic veins are superficial vein, and they're connected over here through median cubital vein. And right here between basilic and cephalic, you have median antebrachial vein. Right, both cephalic and basilic veins then connect to your deep veins. Cephalic is just a little bit higher to the subclavian, and basilic bring blood to axillary vein. Now we also can see here inferior vena cava that collects blood from low body part, and there is one more vein that brings blood from your low part of your body to the heart, but it's alternative route, so it doesn't go through inferior vena cava. It's a zygous vein that brings blood to superior vena cava, but it collects blood from the low body part. And we already discussed this diagram, and the last one we also covered, that is hepatic portal circulation. Okay, so I do have some other videos that I recorded that cover blood vessels, and we will cover more material during our labs. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope it was helpful.